What's up, everyone? Welcome back to King Anime Review, and for this video I'll be talking about Naruto x Boruto Ultimate Ninja Storm Connections, which is shaping up to be the best video game in all of history. Now, previously I said Storm 4 is the best video game of all time, but Storm Connections has potential to surpass it. And yeah, I'll be explaining why in this video. Also, I'll be debunking the claims from the haters, who a lot of whom are running around saying this game is basically just a expansion to the Storm series, or it should have been DLC, should have been Storm 4 DLC or whatever, or it's just a collection pack, which is all false. Now, also, I do want to clarify something I said in my previous Storm Connections video, where I did make kind of a wrong statement because I was basically downplaying the Storm series, which is the best video game series of all time. I basically said that each Storm game mainly just added a new story mode and new characters, and they switched up the combat a little bit. Now, that's not all each of the Storm games did. Most of the Storm games, in fact, pretty much all of them, seem drastically different, or not drastically different like they're completely different games. They are, I mean, they feel different enough to be considered like a sequel. But yeah, like, you know, other video game series are actually closer in terms of their, like, how the prequel is to the sequel. For example, the NBA 2K series, not much change, except like even they usually have like what they call a My Career mode, but they add new stuff to it, like I think every year, or they kind of switch it up a little bit. But for the most part, the gameplay is pretty much the same and stuff like that. Also, same is the case with, like, for example, the WWE 2K series, or a lot of people say FIFA is pretty similar as well, where, you know, these are basically video sports games or entertainment game series, which the gameplay doesn't drastically change. And, you know, they tweak the gameplay a little bit, and then they probably add a new mode or something different with the story mode. They might tweak that up a bit. That's pretty much what the Storm games do, except the Storm games actually, in terms of like how different they are, they're actually vastly different in comparison to other video game series. Each of the Storm games feel pretty unique in comparison to other video game series. Even if we look at other anime game series, for example, the One Piece Pirate Warrior series, they have fewer differences, and it was for One Piece Pirate Warrior games. They have fewer differences between those games than you have in the Storm series. Whereas, for example, in Storm 1, you have pre-battle dialogue between the characters, which I really wish Storm Connections had, but based on the gameplay we've seen at Anime Expo, or at least I've seen, I think you guys have seen it as well. Based on the gameplay from Anime Expo, they aren't doing the pre-battle dialogue that we got in Storm 1. I really wish they brought that back. That's the main thing I would have had them bring back from Storm 1, as well as the fourth combo, or the side combo, which they took out of, you know, I believe they took that out around Generations, but that was in Storm 1 and Storm 2, I believe. I know it was in Storm 1 for sure, the fourth combo, the side combo. But yeah, so those things were in Storm 1. Also, they had jutsu clashes and wall fighting, which a lot of people want them to bring back. I personally do not want them to bring back jutsu clashes. I think that'll be a waste of development time. Plus, it'll probably, you know, take away from the matches a little bit. I mean, some jutsus can clash, like the Shidori and Rasengan, but most of the jutsus in the game is probably not going to work like clashing. It'll probably be like a weird thing to have. You got to keep in mind, Storm 1 had a way smaller roster than Storm Connections and Storm 4 had. Storm 4 had, I believe, 124 characters or something like that, and Storm Connections has even more. And Storm 1 had, I think, about 20 characters. So, yeah, I mean, you know, bringing Clashing back is going to be kind of ridiculous. I don't develop video games, but I think that would take up way too much development time, trying to make each jutsu that each character have be able to clash. And then on top of that, it slows down the gameplay because you got to mash the controls, mash the button or whatever. We don't need clashes. Wall fighting, they took that out as well, but they did bring it back in Storm 4 in a story mode, but you can't do that in free battle. But that was something that was in Storm 1, and it didn't come back into the Storm series until Storm 4, but it was only a story mode exclusive thing that they didn't have in free battle. Then you have Storm 2, which added online mode, which Storm 1 didn't have. So that's a new thing that they added. Plus, they drastically changed the story mode, making, adding basically cutscenes to each, important scene in the story mode. Whereas Storm 1 didn't have that many cutscenes. On top of that, it didn't really show the story chronologically. from what I remember. I played a decent amount of Storm 1, and they made me do 3 boss battles in a row. They had me do the Shukaku boss battle, and then, or actually, I think it was the Gamabunta boss battle first, and then the Shukaku one, and then Tsunade and Jiraiya versus Orochimaru and his big snake Manda. They made me do all 3 of those battles without any cutscenes or dialogue in between, really. All you did see was like words on the screen, scrolling, giving you a brief synopsis of the story. So, yeah, Storm 1's story mode, in terms of like how it actually told the story of Part 1 Naruto, was not necessarily good. It wasn't terrible. It's not like as bad as, like, for example, the My Hero One's Justice game, which did a pretty bad job at telling the story mode, because it was literally no boss battles or anything like that. And it was basically no cutscenes in that, and the first My Hero One's Justice game. And even the second one, they only had like 1 boss battle, I believe. But anyways, so yeah, Storm 1 didn't have that good of a story mode. Storm 2's was way better, but also Storm 1 felt like more of an open world game, because you could actually jump across buildings, and, you know, you can jump on buildings and stuff, climb on walls and stuff like that. You couldn't do that in Storm 2 story mode, but the Storm 2 story mode allowed you to explore areas outside of the Hidden Leaf Village. And then, you know, you had, after Storm 2, you had Storm Generations, which didn't, the Storm Generations just mainly changed the mechanics, like adding a substitution bar. And then you got Storm 3. And Storm 3, basically was kind of like Storm 2, except they did do some changes to the mechanics as well. Like they added instant awakening and stuff like that. And then you get Storm Revolution, which had a huge, it was basically vastly different from the other Storm games, where, they added a whole new mode, which I believe was called Ninja World Tournament mode, where it was basically kind of like a J-Stars thing, where I think it was like a 4v4 or something like that. Or you have to, but you could, you lock on to different opponents, and you have to fight a decent, it was basically like free-for-all battles, where you had to fight about 2 or 3 characters or something like that. It might have been a 4-person, 1 person for themselves type of thing, but it was only offline for the story mode part of that game. I hope they bring that mode back in Storm Connections, but make it offline and online, so you can play it in free battle and you can play it in online. I hope they do that for Storm Connections. And then obviously you have Storm 4, which was vastly different from the other Storm games. It added leader switching, battle damage, etc. Now, with that being said, now we get to Storm Connections. Now, Storm Connections is, just like those other Storm games, it is a deserving sequel. It is making big enough changes to justify it being a sequel. It's not just an expansion pack. It could not have just been DLC. And if it was just DLC for Storm 4, it would go down in history as the best and biggest DLC in the history of video games, I'm pretty sure. Because what DLC literally adds 4 recut, re-edited, revamped, remastered story modes from 4 different games? What DLC does that? Like, seriously, think about it. This would be like, for example, because we got the new Budokai, the Dragon Ball Budokai Tenkaichi series is returning. It'll be like, for example, if they, instead of doing that, and some people will say, oh, well, they got new graphics and whatever. Well, yeah, because obviously, if they tried to bring back the graphics from the previous Budokai Tenkaichi series, it would be way outdated. Because the last Budokai game came out on I think it came out on a Wii or the PS3 or something. I'm pretty sure the Budokai series was on a Wii. I actually had Budokai Tenkaichi 3, but I think they had one more game after that. But yeah, basically, that came out like 2 console generations ago. So, of course, they had to revamp the graphics drastically in comparison to the Storm series, which only came out one console generation ago, the PS4 era. So they don't need to do a drastic overhaul with the graphics, because 1, it didn't come out 2 console generations ago or 3 console generations ago, like how the Budokai Tenkaichi series came out. And 2, the graphics still look fantastic with the Storm 4 graphics still actually look pretty good today. So they did enhance the graphics. You can tell they enhanced the graphics a little bit, like with the lighting, and, it seems like they did enhance the graphics a little bit. But they didn't drastically change the art style for the game, because they really didn't need to. The graphics still hold up to this day. So that's the case with that. But it'll be like, imagine if instead of doing that new Dragon Ball Budokai Tenkaichi game, imagine they just did a deal. Well, I guess it wouldn't work, because that game was, like I said, it was like 2 generations ago, console-wise. So they couldn't have done DLC for it, really, because no consoles is out. They still, I guess people still have those old consoles, but they're not really selling those anymore. But my point is, it just, like, think about it. Like, what game, seriously, what game has ever had 4 story modes that are recut, re-edited, revamped, remastered from 4 different games, all combined into one game as a DLC. Like seriously, that's 4 whole story modes. That wouldn't work in a Storm 4 DLC. Like really, like how much storage space would that take up? On top of all of the stuff you already got in Storm 4, you basically got 3 story modes in there already. You got the adventure mode, which was kind of okay. Some people said it was bad, but I think it was decent. You got the Road to Boruto story mode, which was fantastic, and then you got the 4th Grade Ninja War story mode, which was fantastic. So you're really telling me you're gonna add Storm 3, Storm 1, Storm 2? You really telling me you're gonna add all 3 of those story modes to a Storm 4 DLC? That don't make sense, bro. It really doesn't. And yes, we do have Storm Legacy and Storm Trilogy. So they're not just remastering the story mode because they kind of did that with Storm Legacy, but they're really recutting it and connecting it all into one game. And that would have been way too big for a DLC. And if they would have did that for a DLC for Storm 4, that would have been a huge DLC. But not only the story mode thing, the changes in mechanics, they took out the tilt and they added in the second jutsu. So they took out the tilt and the chakra shuriken, and they replaced the chakra shuriken inputs with the second jutsu, which is fantastic. I heard that back in the Ultimate Ninjas, back on I think it was on the PS2, back when they were putting out Ultimate Ninja games, not Ultimate Ninja Storm, but Ultimate Ninja games, which was a previous video game series for Naruto. They had 2 jutsus in that game. Now they finally have 2 jutsus in Storm, and it's gonna be cool to see if like you can change, switch between the jutsus, because some characters like the last Sasuke or Rinne Sharingan Sasuke, he has multiple different jutsus. Like literally, you can choose which jutsu he does. Onyx, Chidori, Amaterasu, Fireball jutsu, etc. He has multiple different jutsus. So if you're going to be able to choose between multiple different jutsus, that's going to be fantastic. And yeah, each character has 2 jutsus now, so you don't have to choose. And when I say choose between jutsus, I mean I hope you're able to choose both the first jutsu and the second jutsu, which from what I heard, you are able to do that for certain characters. Most likely the characters who already have multiple jutsus in the game. But imagine, you don't have to. In this game, you don't have to choose between the Fireball Jutsu and the Chidori for Kid Sasuke anymore, because most likely they're both going to be his jutsus. So that's cool right there. Taking out the tilt, I don't really care that much about the tilt. I think I could have left it in, but it's not that big of a deal, them taking that out. They actually have health bars that fully restore each round, unlike in Storm 4. Also, characters can get hit while they're on the ground. They added in they made it where your counter is basically free, where it uses up no resources and you can just do it over and over again. They made the items like the guard break pill. They made that, they put it on a cooldown time instead of giving it a number limit. And they've made multiple different changes to the game. And the combat looks great, and honestly looks great in Storm Connections. In fact, it actually looks like the gameplay improved from Storm 4. And really the only thing I hope that I wish that they added in is the 4th combo, aka the side combo, which Storm 1 had, and the pre-match dialogue, which Storm 1 had. Instead, they have the Storm 4 style where the characters don't talk before they battle, they just run to the battlefield and clash into each other. But other than that, the game just look fantastic. It really does. Now, on top of the gameplay mechanic changes, and on top of the fact that they're adding, on top of the fact that's the story mode stuff I already talked about, they're also adding a brand new story mode. Some people is comparing Storm Connections to Storm Generations and Storm Revolutions, but the thing about those games is that was kind of lacking when it came to story content. Now, granted, they did have story content, but really, like for, I believe, Storm Generations, or actually no, it might have been Storm Revolutions, where I think they had what they call it, the anime something escapades or something like that, where they show like 2D animated clips of the Akatsuki coming together and stuff like that, which was 2D animated clips, meaning it wasn't in-game 3D in the gameplay engine style animation. So, and plus it wasn't showing, like, it wasn't no quick time events, no boss battles or anything like that. You was literally just watching an anime, basically like you watch an anime episode and then you go into the gameplay fighting in a basic free battle type of thing. So it wasn't like the classic numbered titles of the Storm games where you had quick time events, you see a 3D animation, 3D animated in-game, cutscenes with quick time events that you have to press buttons in order to, succeed and, you know, beat the boss and stuff like that. They didn't have that in Storm Revolutions. Also, Storm Revolutions, like I said, had a whole new mode, which I hope they actually do bring back to Storm Connections. Now, one thing they are bringing to Storm Connections that's from Storm Revolutions that wasn't in Storm 4 is the character customization thing. You're going to be able to customize your character. They showed like cat ears on Team 7 when they announced it. I don't know what other customization options they're going to have. They're probably going to have masks and stuff like that, like how Storm Revolutions have. Hopefully, they have even more options. That'll be cool. You know, so, you know, and then on top of that, I mean, they've added a decent amount of stuff to the game already. And yeah, so let me just recap. So the reason why this wouldn't have worked, this Storm Connections thing wouldn't have worked as a DLC, and it's some stuff that I haven't even mentioned yet that I'm going to get to. Because think about it. Well, first, let me just talk about all this new stuff that we already know for sure is coming to Storm Connections. And I'm going to explain how it would have been way too big for a DLC. And if it would have been a DLC, it'll probably be the biggest and the best DLC of all time. So let's go over all of the things that Storm Connections has already revealed. It's going to be 60 FPS for new generation, or shall I say current generation consoles, meaning PS5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC. So for current generation consoles, it's going to be 60 FPS. That's a pretty big change. We're going to have revamped, improved graphics. We're going to get a remaster, recut, re-edited, revamped version of the story modes from Storm 1, 2, 3, and 4. And it's going to be connected into one game, unlike the Storm Legacy and Storm Trilogy thing, which technically they were kind of one game, but you had to, like, you were on a home screen where you had to pick between the games. And when you pick between the games, it was basically like you were playing the old games, like in their own style. Like the story mode wasn't connected or anything like that. Like if you play Storm 1, you would still have the wall fighting and stuff like that. You don't have the same mechanics as you had in Storm 3 and vice versa. So it was still, they basically still felt like three different games in the Storm Legacy and Storm Trilogy. Or in Storm Legacy, it was basically 4 games because you had the Storm 4 as well. But the Storm Trilogy, which I have, it still feels like 3 different games. And this game is going to feel like one because the story modes are all connected into one, which is actually a very impressive and historic thing for Naruto games, because we haven't had any Naruto game in history that has covered the entire series, or at least covered, you know, story content from part 1 Naruto all the way until the end of Shippuden. This is going to be the first game in Naruto history to do that. And by end of Shippuden, I mean end of the 4th grade Ninja War arc. I don't mean all the way until Naruto Hinata's wedding, but you guys know what I'm talking about. Now, anyways, so yeah, those are 3 things that I just listed right there. You know, like I said, 60 FPS for current generation consoles, improved graphics, revamped graphics, or shall I say at least improved graphics, enhanced graphics, and then the recut, re-edited story mode connected into one, remastering all 4 of the main title or numbered titles of the Storm games story modes. All of those things are fantastic, and those things alone is worthy of being a sequel, because literally, how are you going to fit all of that into a DLC? Not to mention, I didn't even mention the new Boruto story mode that they're having, which is going to be an original story mode for the game, for Storm Connections. It's a story exclusive to Storm Connections, which is very, very cool, because this story is not in the anime or in the manga, and it looks pretty cool based on the trailer we've seen. We're going to have like this guy who follows Pain's ideology, who's basically like a Pain sympathizer, and who's trying to carry out basically, you know, Pain's goal of bringing Pain to the world, and he starts the 4th grade Ninja War. That story mode is looking pretty good. So you're telling me that could have been a DLC, 60 FPS, enhanced graphics, remaster story content, remaster story modes from 4 different games, plus a new story mode? And Storm 4 already has 3 story modes. So that would have been basically like adding 5 story modes to Storm 4, which already has 3 story modes. So that would have made Storm 4 had like 8 story modes. Like Storm 4, if this was a DLC, that would mean Storm 4 would have 8 story modes, which is kind of ridiculous. Like, bro, that would have been way too big for a DLC. Not to mention, number 5, gameplay mechanics has changed. Some people might not think it's huge changes, but there are pretty big changes, pretty big, that would be kind of like a little bit too big for it just to be a patch. Some people are saying this is just a patch. This should have just been a DLC. This is just a Storm Legacy / Storm Trilogy all over again. This is just a collection pack. This is just a patch. This is just a DLC. They keep on saying this dumb stuff, but think about it. Look at those 5 things I already listed. 60 FPS for current generation consoles. enhanced, improved graphics, remastered story modes from 4 different games, a completely new exclusive original story mode for the game, plus new battle mechanics. The battle mechanics has changed. Those are 5 things. Plus, we're getting new characters. 7 new characters has already been revealed, and there's more on the way that's going to be revealed in the future. You're telling me all 6 of these things could have fit in Storm 4 as a DLC. How much storage space would that have taken up? That would have been probably the biggest DLC in video game history. And definitely would have been the best DLC in video game history. You really mean to tell me that they should have put all of that into a DLC instead of making a new game? On top of that, them making a new game is going to make things better because it's going to be a PS5 version and a PS4 version. Storm 4, in case you didn't know, is basically still the PS4 version. There's no, like, some PS5 games do have a, basically an upgraded version, but Storm 4 is basically, if you play Storm 4 on a PS5, you're basically still playing the Storm 4 version of, you're basically still playing the PS4 version of Storm 4 if you're playing on a PS5. It might be, faster loading times or, some enhancements due to the fact that you're playing on a better console, on a newer console. However, it hasn't been like an upgrade pack, or it hasn't been like a PS5 upgrade. So instead of doing a PS5 upgrade, they're making a whole new game, and they've given us reasons, enough reasons. Those 6 reasons that I listed are enough reasons to justify calling this a sequel. These are bigger and more significant changes to a game that's a sequel than I've seen in most other anime, if not all the other anime games. Think about it. Think about the differences between My Hero Academia 1's Justice 1, the first one's Justice, and then 1's Justice 2. Not a lot of big changes. All they did was change the story mode, and the story mode still was pretty garbage. 1's Justice 2, just like it was in 1's Justice 1. Literally, they just added 1 boss battle from what I heard. I didn't finish the story mode because I don't like those type of story modes where there's no boss battles. On top of that, they kind of they made like a stage transition thing. And other than that, the game was pretty much exactly the same. They added new characters. They changed the story mode up a little bit, and they added like a stage transition thing. That's pretty much it. Other than that, it was basically like the same game. So that's, if you want to say something should have been DLC, 1's Justice 2 should have been a DLC if that's the case. And then you got the Dragon Ball games, Dragon Ball Xenoverse 1 and 2. Are there really any huge differences between those games? I don't think so. I don't know. I only played Xenoverse 2. I have seen, gameplay of Xenoverse 1 and stuff. But I don't think it was drastically different other than the story mode. But the thing with Xenoverse 2 is they added a lot of DLC over time and different raid boss events and stuff like that. That the same could be the case for Storm Connections. We can get DLC for this game years down the line. And if we're gonna get DLC for the game, why not make a new game if they're trying to make a modern game, basically revamp the Storm series? Why not make a new game rather than going back to Storm 4 and just adding more DLC? Especially, they've given us enough reason to call this a new game. They really have. And think about the sports games. 2K, FIFA, UFC, whatever, NFL. I'm pretty sure all of those games that have sequels, there aren't as many differences between those the sequels for those games as there is for Storm Connections. And then if you want to take other games into consideration, fighting games, for example, the Mortal Kombat series. Yeah, they might change the story mode every once in a while and add some new, change the roster's movesets. By the way, they're doing that for Storm Connections as well. So I should add that. That's the 7th thing they're doing for Storm Connections. Because if you've seen the Anime Expo gameplay, you would see that Storm, characters like Jiraiya have completely different moves. Jiraiya, for example, he uses a fire style jutsu that he's never used in Storm 4. So they literally gave him a whole new jutsu for his second jutsu. And then they're changing characters' jutsu. Like, for example, Hinata, she can do her jutsu in midair now. Same with Obito. They couldn't do that in Storm 4 due to their jutsus in midair. So they are changing up the old characters' movesets at least a little bit. And each character is getting a second jutsu. So, yeah. Really, how are you still, seriously, who is still calling this a patch, a Storm 4 patch, a DLC, a collection pack? Who is still calling this game that at this point? Seriously, this is worthy of being a sequel. This is just as big of a sequel as Revolutions was as far as how much stuff is adding and changing. And Storm 4. The only game in the Storm series that didn't really make drastic enough changes to justify a sequel. I mean, even that's actually no. All Storm games made drastic enough changes to justify a sequel. Now that I think about it, I was gonna say Generations wasn't, well, the thing with Generations is they did change the combat, like adding the substitution bar. And I believe they made the combat faster or whatever. Other than that, the story mode wasn't, from what I remember, wasn't necessarily that good. I mean, it wasn't bad necessarily, but it was kind of like Revolutions, anime escapades thing. But anyways, overall, yeah, the Storm Connections is looking fantastic. Anybody hating on this game, I don't know what y'all are on, honestly. I don't know what y'all been watching. Y'all must not have been keeping up with the news for this game. And if y'all have been keeping up with the news for the game, yeah, I don't know what y'all talking about, because this game is not just a collection pack or it's not just a collection or a patch or a, DLC. It's not just something that should have been a DLC. This is justifiable that they're making this a new game. It is going to be worth the $60. I've been seeing people say it's $70. No, it's actually $60. And I think it's going to be worth every single dime. And yeah, that's what I got to say about Storm Connections. Very much looking forward to it. Let me know what you guys think about it in the comment section below. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out.